My wife came home at 2:47 a.m. with her underwear in her purse and someone else's cologne on her neck. I know because I was sitting in our kitchen, nursing my third beer and watching the digital clock on the microwave tick away another sleepless night. Vanessa thought I was asleep upstairs, but I'd been tracking her lies for weeks now. The late networking events, the mysterious charges on our credit cards, the way she'd started locking her phone and taking 40-minute showers. Matt? Her voice carried that fake sweetness she used when she was about to gaslight me. What are you doing up, honey? I took a long pull from my Budweiser and studied my wife of 12 years. Vanessa Harlan, HR director at Pinnacle Solutions, stood in our kitchen doorway looking like she'd been through a blender. Her blonde hair was messed up despite obvious attempts to fix it. Her lipstick was gone, but there were red marks around her mouth from someone else's kisses. Couldn't sleep, I said, keeping my voice level. How was the networking thing? She fumbled with her purse, and I caught a flash of black lace being shoved deeper inside. The same black lace set I'd bought her for our anniversary 6 months ago. The one she claimed was too uncomfortable to wear for me. Oh, you know how these events are. She moved to the sink, keeping her back to me. Boring presentations, terrible wine, forced conversations with people from other departments. Funny thing about that, I said, standing up slowly. I called Pinnacle's main line around 10 tonight, asked the security desk if there were any events running late. They said the building's been empty since 6. Vanessa's shoulders tensed, but she didn't turn around. It wasn't at the office, Matt. It was at the Marriott downtown. The Marriott. I walked over to where she stood. Up close, the cologne smell was stronger, something expensive and pretentious, not the kind of thing the middle management types at her company would wear. What's his name, Van? She spun around, and I saw panic flash across her face before she covered it with indignation. Excuse me? What are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm asking straight out. What's his name? You're being paranoid and controlling, Matt. This is exactly why I need space to breathe, to grow as a person. You're suffocating me with your insecurity. There it was, the script she'd been practicing. Probably with whatever self-help book she'd been reading, or more likely, with whoever had been whispering in her ear about how she deserved better than a blue-collar construction manager. Space to breathe, I repeated. Is that what you call it? I'm not doing this with you tonight. She pushed past me toward the stairs. You're drunk and paranoid, and I'm not going to stand here and be interrogated like some kind of criminal. Van! My voice stopped her at the bottom of the stairs. Your underwear's in your purse. She froze for maybe 3 seconds. Then she straightened her shoulders and looked back at me with cold eyes I didn't recognize. So what if it is? Maybe I'm finally comfortable enough with my own sexuality to make my own choices about my own body. Maybe that threatens you because you've never been able to satisfy me anyway. The words hit like a physical blow, but I kept my expression neutral. In my line of work, you learn to take hits and keep standing. You also learn that when someone swings that hard, they're usually covering for something. Interesting choice of words, I said. Satisfy you. Makes it sound like someone else has been trying. God, you're pathetic. She started up the stairs. I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight. Don't follow me. I listened to her footsteps cross the ceiling above, heard the guest room door slam. Then I walked to the kitchen window and looked out at our quiet street. Mrs. Duffy's house next door was dark, but I knew the old woman would be up early, probably had already seen Vanessa stumble in. Nothing happened in this neighborhood without Mrs. Duffy knowing about it. I finished my beer and started planning. The next morning, Vanessa left for work without saying a word. I waited until I heard her car pull out of the driveway, then went upstairs to the guest room. She'd been sloppy in her rush to get ready. The black underwear was crumpled on the floor next to the bed, and her purse was open on the dresser. Inside, along with the usual wallet and makeup, I found a receipt from the Riverside Inn, not the Marriott. The Riverside Inn, a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, where people went when they didn't want to be seen. The timestamp showed 11:30 p.m. to 2:15 a.m. Room 237. I took a picture of the receipt with my phone, put everything back where I found it, and headed to work. Sammy Rodriguez was already at the job site when I arrived, standing next to his pickup truck, with a coffee and a cigarette. My foreman for the past 8 years. Sammy was the kind of guy who could read trouble on a man's face from 50 yards away. You look like hell, boss, he said as I climbed out of my truck. Rough night. I grabbed my hard hat and clipboard. Van's been acting strange lately. Strange how? I gave him the basics without going into details. Sammy listened, nodding occasionally, his weathered face getting more serious as I talked. You want some advice? He said when I finished. I'm listening. Document everything. Every lie, every weird charge on the credit cards, every time she comes home late. You're gonna need it. You think it's that bad? Sammy flicked his cigarette into the dirt. Matt, I've been married 3 times. Trust me, when they start talking about needing space and finding themselves, they've already found someone else. The question is what you're gonna do about it. What I was going to do about it was exactly what I did best. Plan carefully, work systematically, and build something that would last. That afternoon, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to Jerry Kowalski, the best divorce attorney in town. Jerry and I had played softball together for years, before his law practice took off. He agreed to meet me for drinks that evening. The second was to the credit card companies. As the primary account holder, I had every right to freeze our cards and request detailed statements going back 6 months. Amazing how cooperative customer service becomes when you mention potential fraud. Man lied. The third was to my bank. Same story there. Joint accounts meant joint access, and I wanted to know exactly where our money had been going. Men lied. By 5 o'clock, I had a clearer picture of my wife's extracurricular activities. The Riverside Inn appeared on our credit card statements 7 times in the past 2 months, always on nights when Vanessa claimed to be working late or attending some professional event. There were also charges at expensive restaurants I'd never been to, a jewelry store, and Victoria's Secret. My wife had been financing her affair with our money. Jerry met me at the Smiling Moose, a dive bar downtown that served cheap beer and minded its own business. The owner, Tank Morrison, was an ex-cop who'd bought the place after taking early retirement. He poured drinks, listened to troubles, and never repeated what he heard. "How bad is it?" Jerry asked after I laid out the evidence. "Bad enough." I slid the printed credit card statements across the table. "She's been careful not to leave a paper trail with her communications, but she's been sloppy with the money." Jerry studied the statements, making notes on a legal pad. "This is good, really good. In a no-fault state, adultery doesn't technically matter for the divorce itself, but it sure as hell matters for asset division, especially when marital funds are being used to support the affair. What's my next move? Keep documenting. Get more evidence if you can, but don't do anything illegal. No hacking her phone, no breaking into her email, nothing that could come back to bite you in court. What about confronting her? Not yet. Right now, she doesn't know that you know. That's an advantage. The minute you confront her, she'll get her own lawyer and start covering her tracks." Jerry finished his beer. "How long you been married?" 12 years. "Kids?" "No. Van always said she wasn't ready." "House?" "In both our names, but I put down the down payment for money I inherited from my dad." Jerry made more notes. "Okay, here's what we're gonna do. I'm going to start preparing paperwork, but we're not filing anything yet. You're going to keep being the loving husband while you gather evidence. Can you do that?" "I can do that." What I didn't tell Jerry was that I was already 3 steps ahead of him. That night, Vanessa came home at a reasonable hour and actually cooked dinner. She was trying to act normal, probably feeling guilty about the night before. She chattered about work, asked about my day, even suggested we watch a movie together. "I'm sorry about last night," she said as we sat on the couch. "I was stressed about the Peterson account, and I took it out on you. That wasn't fair." "It's okay," I lied. "We all have bad days." She curled up next to me, something she hadn't done in months. "I love you, Matt. You know that, right?" "I know." But what I really knew was that she was scared. Her accusations the night before had been too specific, too vicious. She was either trying to cover her guilt or setting up justification for whatever she was planning next. I was betting on both. The next few days fell into a routine. Vanessa would leave for work, I'd head to the job site, and we'd both come home and play house. She was being extra affectionate, extra attentive. She even initiated sex twice, something that hadn't happened in months. But she was still taking her phone everywhere, still locking it, still getting texts that made her smile in ways that had nothing to do with me. On Thursday night, she announced she had another networking event on Friday. "It's the quarterly regional meeting," she said over dinner. "All the HR directors from the tri-state area. Should be good for making connections." "Where's it being held?" "The conference center at the Marriott. Probably won't be done until late, so don't wait up." I nodded and made appropriate husband noises about her career advancement and networking opportunities. Inside, I was already planning my Friday night. The next evening, I parked across the street from Pinnacle Solutions and waited. Vanessa's car was in the lot, which meant she was maintaining the pretense of working late before heading to her real destination. At 7:30, she came out of the building, but she didn't go to her car. Instead, she walked 2 blocks to the parking garage where a silver BMW was waiting. I couldn't see the driver clearly, but I got a good shot of the license plate with my phone's camera. They drove to the Riverside Inn. I waited in the parking lot for 3 hours, taking pictures of the BMW, the license plate, and the motel room they entered together. At 11:45, they came out. The man was tall, probably in his 30s, wearing an expensive suit and the kind of confident swagger that screamed money and privilege. He kissed my wife goodbye in the parking lot, and I got that on camera too. When I ran the license plate through a friend who worked at the DMV, the name that came back was Elliot Powers. A quick internet search told me everything I needed to know. 34 years old, senior consultant at Morrison Tech Solutions, recently divorced, lived in the expensive Riverside district downtown. My wife was screwing a tech consultant who made 3 times what I did and probably told her she deserved better than a construction worker who came home dirty and tired every day. Time to show both of them what a construction worker could build when he put his mind to it. Monday morning, I called in sick to work and drove to Morrison Tech Solutions. The company occupied 3 floors of a glass office building downtown, the kind of place where people wore suits to sit in meetings about meetings. I sat in the lobby for 2 hours, pretending to read magazines while I watched the morning routine. Elliot Powers arrived at 9:15, driving his BMW and wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in a week. He was everything I wasn't: tall, polished, successful in the way that impressed people at cocktail parties. He was also soft. I could tell from the way he walked, the way he carried himself. This was a man who'd never thrown a punch, never worked with his hands, never had to fight for anything in his life. That was about to change. I followed him to the coffee shop across the street during his lunch break. He ordered some complicated drink with multiple adjectives and extra foam. I ordered black coffee and sat 2 tables away, close enough to hear him talking on his phone. "No, I can't do dinner tonight," he was saying. "I have that client presentation tomorrow, and I need to prep, but tomorrow night is definitely happening. I've got reservations at Chez Laurent." He paused, listening to whoever was on the other end. Based on the smile that spread across his face, I had a pretty good idea who it was. "I know, baby. I miss you too. But we have to be careful. Your husband is getting suspicious." My hands tightened around my coffee cup, but I kept my expression neutral. "Don't worry about him," Elliot continued. "From what you've told me, he's just some blue-collar loser who doesn't appreciate what he has. When you're ready to make the move, I'll take care of everything." He hung up and sat back in his chair, looking pleased with himself. I waited until he left, then followed him back to his office building. That evening, Vanessa came home with flowers and takeout from my favorite Chinese restaurant. "I thought we could have a nice quiet night together," she said, kissing me on the cheek. "No work, no distractions, just us." "That sounds great." I helped her set the table. "How was your day?" "Busy. The Peterson account is turning into a nightmare, and I had back-to-back meetings all afternoon." She opened the containers of food. "What about you? Sammy said you called in sick." "Just needed a mental health day. Sometimes the job gets to you, you know?" She nodded sympathetically, but I caught her checking her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. No messages, which probably meant Elliot was busy preparing for his client presentation. "Van," I said as we ate, "do you ever think about what you want out of life? I mean, long term." "What do you mean?" "I mean, are you happy? With us? With where we are? With how things are going?" She put down her chopsticks and looked at me carefully. "Why are you asking?" "Just curious. We've been married 12 years, and sometimes I wonder if we're both getting what we need." "I think we're in a good place," she said, but her voice was cautious. "Why? Are you not happy?" "I'm happy," I lied. "I just want to make sure you are too." She reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm happy, Matt. I love you." And the words came so easily, so naturally, that I almost believed them. Almost. Into the huff. After dinner, we watched a movie on the couch. Vanessa fell asleep with her head on my shoulder, and for a moment, I remembered why I'd fallen in love with her in the first place. She looked peaceful, innocent, like the woman I'd married instead of the stranger who'd been lying to me for months. But then her phone buzzed with a text message, and even in her sleep she smiled. Into the huff. Tuesday night was Chez Laurent. I knew because I called the restaurant and asked if they had any reservations under the name Powers. They did. 8 o'clock for 2. I also knew because Vanessa announced she was working late again. Into the huff. "The Peterson thing is reaching crisis mode," she said over breakfast. "I might not be home until after midnight. Want me to wait up?" "No, don't. I'll probably be exhausted." "In time, I'm sure she would be. At 7:30, I was parked outside Chez Laurent. The restaurant was exactly the kind of place Elliot Powers would choose to impress my wife. Expensive, pretentious, with valet parking and a wine list that required a second mortgage. And to behave, they arrived separately, probably to avoid being seen together. Vanessa had dressed up for the occasion, wearing a red dress I'd never seen before, and heels that made her legs look incredible. She looked beautiful, radiant even, in a way she hadn't looked for me in years. Elliot met her at the entrance, kissed her cheek, and escorted her inside like they were a real couple instead of two people destroying a marriage. Ndabahaf. I sat in my truck and waited. Ndabahaf. They were inside for 2 hours. When they came out, Elliot's hand was on the small of Vanessa's back, possessive and confident. They stood by the valet station, talking quietly, and I could see them making plans for the rest of the evening. Sure enough, they drove separately to the Riverside Inn. This time, I didn't just take pictures. I got out of my truck and walked to the motel office. "Excuse me," I said to the clerk, a bored-looking kid who was probably working his way through community college. "I'm supposed to meet my business partner here, but I can't remember what room," he said. Tall guy, expensive suit, driving a silver BMW. "Room 237, the kid said without looking up from his phone. "Same room he always gets." "Always?" "Yeah, him and his lady friend. They're here like twice a week." I thanked the kid and walked back to my truck. Room 237. The same room from the receipt I'd found in Vanessa's purse. They had a regular spot for their affair, a routine, a pattern. Patterns could be disrupted. I drove home and spent the rest of the night planning phase 2 of my construction project. By the time Vanessa crept into the house at 2:30 a.m., I had a blueprint for destroying both their lives. And unlike my wife, I was very good at following through on my plans. The next morning, I made a call to Rachel Morrison, Vanessa's best friend and biggest enabler. Rachel worked in marketing at a competing firm and spent most of her time gossiping about everyone else's business while her own marriage fell apart. "Matt!" Rachel's voice was artificially bright. "How are you? It's been forever since we've talked." "I'm doing well, thanks. Listen, I wanted to plan something special for Van's birthday next month, and I was hoping you could help me figure out what she's been interested in lately." "Oh, that's so sweet. Van is so lucky to have you." I try. The thing is, she's been working so much lately, all these networking events and late meetings. I barely see her anymore." "I know, right? She's been so busy with that Peterson account and all those regional conferences. I keep telling her she needs to make time for herself, for her own happiness." "Regional conferences?" "Yeah, the quarterly meetings with all the other HR directors. She was just telling me how inspiring it's been, meeting all these successful people who really understand her potential." I let Rachel talk, feeding her just enough questions to keep her going. What I learned was that my wife had been sharing details of her affair with her best friend, but she'd been smart enough to frame it as professional networking and personal growth. "She seems different lately," I said. "More confident, happier, like she's found something she was missing." "Exactly. I've been telling her for years that she needed to spread her wings, explore what else is out there. She's such an amazing woman, and she deserves to be with someone who really appreciates her worth." "Someone who appreciates her worth," I repeated. "That's interesting phrasing." "Well, you know what I mean. Van has so much potential, and she's been stuck in the same routine for so long. Sometimes people need to take risks to find out who they really are." "And you think she should take those risks?" "Absolutely. Life is short, Matt. People change, they grow apart. It's nobody's fault, it's just what happens sometimes." By the time I hung up, I had confirmation that Rachel knew about the affair and was actively encouraging it. She was also laying the groundwork for Vanessa's eventual exit strategy, helping her rationalize the betrayal as personal growth and self-discovery. That afternoon, I called Megan Walsh, another member of Vanessa's inner circle. Megan worked in the same building as Vanessa but for a different company. She was single, bitter about it, and always ready to tear down other people's relationships. "Oh, hey, Matt." Megan's voice was cooler than Rachel's. "What's up? I wanted to ask you about something. Van's been working late a lot lately, and I'm starting to worry about her. She seems stressed." Stressed? She seems pretty happy to me." "Happy?" "Yeah, like glowing. Haven't you noticed? She's been talking about how fulfilled she feels, how she's finally figuring out what she wants from life." "What does she want from life?" There was a pause. "Maybe you should ask her that yourself." "I'm asking you." "Look, Matt, I like you, but this isn't really my business. If Van has things she needs to work through, that's between you and her." "Things she needs to work through? Like what? Like whether she's living the life she actually wants, or just the life she settled for. Another pause. Megan, is there something you think I should know? I think you should pay attention to your wife. Really pay attention, and maybe ask yourself if you're giving her everything she needs. The conversation ended there, but I had what I needed. Megan knew about the affair too, and like Rachel, she was helping Vanessa justify it. My wife hadn't just betrayed me. She'd recruited a support system to help her do it. That evening, Vanessa came home early and announced she wanted to talk. About what? I asked, though I had a pretty good idea. About us. About our marriage. About whether we're both getting what we need. We sat in the living room, and she launched into a speech that sounded like she'd been rehearsing it for weeks. She talked about growing apart, about different life goals, about how people change and sometimes love isn't enough. I feel like we're roommates, Matt. We go through the motions, but there's no passion, no excitement. We're both just existing. And what do you think we should do about that? I think we should consider taking a break, a trial separation. Give each other space to figure out what we really want. A trial separation. I kept my voice calm. For how long? I don't know. A few months, maybe longer. I could stay with Rachel while we work things out. And what happens to the house? The bills? Our life together? We'd figure all that out. The important thing is that we both need room to breathe, to explore who we are as individuals. I nodded thoughtfully, like I was considering her proposal. Can I ask you something, Van? Of course. Is there someone else? Her face went pale, but she recovered quickly. What? No. Matt, this isn't about anyone else. This is about us, about what's not working between us. Because if there was someone else, that would change things. A trial separation is one thing, but if you're already involved with someone, I'm not involved with anyone. The lie came out too fast, too defensive. I can't believe you would even ask me that. I'm asking because I love you, and I want to understand what's really going on. She softened at that, probably thinking she was winning. I love you too, Matt. That's why this is so hard. But sometimes loving someone means letting them go. Letting them go so they can find happiness with someone else. So they can find happiness, period. Whether that's with someone else or just with themselves. I reached over and took her hand. Van, if you need space, we can work something out. But I need you to be honest with me. Completely honest. Can you do that? I am being honest. Are you? She looked me in the eye and lied without flinching. Yes, Matt, I am. That night, after she went to bed, I sat in my basement workshop and finalized my plans. Vanessa wanted space to explore who she was as an individual. Elliot Powers wanted to play house with another man's wife. Rachel and Megan wanted to watch a marriage burn down while they cheered from the sidelines. I was going to give all of them exactly what they wanted, and then I was going to show them what it cost. Friday afternoon. I left work early and drove to Morrison Tech Solutions. I knew Elliot's schedule by now. Knew he usually left around 4:30 for his weekend. I waited in the parking garage, sitting in my truck with the window down, until I heard the familiar sound of expensive shoes on concrete. Elliot Powers? He turned around, startled. Up close, he was even softer than I'd thought. Pale, manicured hands, perfect teeth. The kind of guy who'd never been in a real fight in his life. Yes? Do I know you? Not yet. I got out of my truck slowly, keeping my movements casual. I'm Matt Harlan, Vanessa's husband. The color drained from his face. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. Room 237 at the Riverside Inn, Che Laurent, the silver BMW that's been following my wife around town for the past 2 months. He took a step backward, bumping into his car. Look, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. You've been screwing my wife, and she's been lying to me about it. That's pretty straightforward. I don't have to listen to this. He fumbled for his car keys. If you have a problem with your marriage, take it up with your wife. Oh, I will. But first, I wanted to meet the man she's been risking everything for. I wanted to see what 12 years of marriage was worth to her. I looked him up and down, making no effort to hide my contempt. I have to say, I'm disappointed. I was expecting someone impressive. You need to leave me alone. His voice was shaking now. If you don't, I'll call the police. And tell them what? That your married girlfriend's husband found out about your affair and hurt your feelings? I stepped closer, close enough that he had to look up to meet my eyes. Let me explain something to you, Elliot. I build things for a living. Houses, offices, structures that last for decades. I know how to lay a foundation, how to make sure everything is solid and stable. Another step closer. I also know how to tear things down. How to find the weak points, the places where everything falls apart if you apply the right pressure. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you. See, you think you're winning some kind of game here. You think you took something from me? Proved you're better than me because you wear a suit and drive a fancy car and can afford expensive restaurants? Uh, I smiled, and he flinched. But you don't understand the game you're playing. You're not taking my wife from me, Elliot. You're helping me get rid of her. And when this is all over, you're going to be left with nothing but a reputation as the kind of man who destroys marriages for sport. You're crazy. No, I'm thorough. Ask anyone who's worked with me. When I start a project, I finish it. And right now, you and my wife are my project. I stepped back, giving him room to breathe. Enjoy your weekend, Elliot. Make sure you spend it well, because things are about to get very complicated for you. I walked back to my truck and drove away, leaving him standing in the parking garage, looking like he'd seen a ghost. That night, Vanessa announced she was going out with Rachel and Megan for girls' night. We're going to that new wine bar downtown, she said, applying lipstick in the hallway mirror. Probably won't be back until late. Have fun, I said. Tell the girls I said hello. After she left, I drove to the wine bar and confirmed she wasn't there. Then I drove to the Riverside Inn and found her car in the parking lot, right next to Elliot's BMW. Instead of waiting around, I drove to Rachel Morrison's house and knocked on the door. Matt? Rachel looked surprised and guilty. What are you doing here? Looking for Van. She said she was having girls' night with you and Megan. Oh, we canceled, last minute. I think she said she was going home. Funny thing, she's not home, and her car's not in our driveway. Rachel's face went red. Maybe she went shopping or to the gym. 9 o'clock on a Friday night? I don't know, Matt. I'm not her keeper. No, but you are her friend, her best friend, the person she tells everything to. I leaned against the doorframe, making it clear I wasn't going anywhere. So I'm going to ask you again, Rachel. Where is my wife? I already told you. I don't know. You don't know. Or you don't want to tell me. I don't know. Because if you did know, and you were covering for her, that would make you an accessory to adultery. And in a divorce proceeding, that kind of thing tends to come up. Her face went from red to white. Divorce proceeding? Did I stutter? Matt, I think you're overreacting. Maybe Van just needed some time to herself, some space to think. Space to think. In a motel room, with another man. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone and showed her one of the pictures I'd taken of Vanessa and Elliot kissing in the parking lot of the Riverside Inn. Rachel stared at the photo for a long moment, then looked up at me with something that might have been respect. How long have you known? Long enough. The question is, how long have you been helping her lie to me? Matt, it's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. My wife is cheating on me, and you've been covering for her. That makes you complicit. She's my friend. She's unhappy. She deserves to be happy. At my expense? She didn't plan for this to happen. She met Elliot at a conference, and they just connected. Sometimes these things just happen. These things don't just happen, Rachel. People make choices. Van chose to cheat. You chose to help her. And now I'm choosing how to respond. I put my phone away. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop covering for her. You're going to stop encouraging her. And you're going to stay out of my marriage. Or what? Or I'm going to make sure everyone knows what kind of friend you really are. Your husband, your coworkers, everyone at the country club where you pretend to be such an upstanding member of the community. You wouldn't. Try me. I walked back to my truck, leaving Rachel standing in her doorway, looking like her world had just shifted on its axis. 20 minutes later, I was knocking on Megan Walsh's door. Matt, what are you doing here? Same conversation I just had with Rachel. Where's my wife, Megan? I have no idea what you're talking about. I showed her the same photo I'd shown Rachel. Megan studied it for a longer time, and when she looked up, she was smiling. Well, looks like Little Miss Perfect isn't so perfect after all. You don't seem surprised. I'm not. Van's been talking about how unfulfilled she feels for months. I figured it was only a matter of time before she did something about it. And you encouraged her? I told her she deserves to be happy. If that's encouragement, then yes. Even if it meant destroying my marriage? Megan shrugged. Your marriage was already over, Matt. Van just finally admitted it. Is that what you told her? I told her the truth, that she's wasting her life with someone who doesn't appreciate her, who doesn't challenge her, who doesn't make her feel alive. I nodded slowly. And you think Elliot Powers makes her feel alive? I think he makes her feel like the woman she's supposed to be, instead of the woman she's settled for being. Interesting perspective. Tell me, Megan, what kind of woman do you think Van is supposed to be? The kind who doesn't apologize for wanting more out of life. More money, you mean? More everything. More excitement, more passion, more respect. And she can't get those things from me? Can she? I pretended to consider the question. You know what, Megan? You're absolutely right. Van deserves more. She deserves a man who appreciates her, who makes her feel special, who gives her everything she wants. Megan looked surprised by my agreement. In fact, I continued, I hope she gets exactly what she deserves, and I hope Elliot Powers gives her exactly what she's looking for. That's very mature of you. I'm a mature guy. I believe in consequences, in people getting what they've earned. I smiled. Speaking of which, I hope you get what you deserve too, Megan. What's that supposed to mean? It means that when this all comes out, and it will come out, people are going to remember who encouraged Van to blow up her marriage. They're going to remember who told her she deserved better, who helped her justify cheating on her husband. So you might want to think about how that's going to look to your boss, your friends, your family. Think about what kind of woman encourages adultery. What kind of person takes pleasure in destroying other people's relationships? Her smile faded. You're trying to intimidate me. I'm trying to educate you, the same way I educated Elliot Powers this afternoon. You talked to him? I introduced myself. We had a very enlightening conversation about consequences and weak points and what happens when people play games they don't understand. I turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and Megan, when Van comes crying to you about how everything fell apart, remember that you helped push her off the cliff. By the time I got home, Vanessa's car was in the driveway. I found her in the kitchen, looking flustered and checking her phone constantly. How was girls' night? I asked. Fine. Good. We had a nice time. What did you talk about? Just girl stuff. Work, life, you know. Rachel seemed worried about something when I stopped by her house earlier. Vanessa's head snapped up. You went to Rachel's house. I was looking for you. She said girls' night was canceled, but you weren't home. I went for a drive. I needed to clear my head. Must have been a long drive. You've been gone for 4 hours. I stopped for coffee, and I did some shopping. What did you buy? She looked around frantically, then grabbed a magazine from the counter. I bought this magazine. I looked at the magazine. It was 3 months old, and had our address label on it. Van, I said gently, we need to talk.